Rise and shine, get a glow, 'cause you know you're gonna shine like the star. You know the sun's gonna rise in your eyes, even though it's kind of bright. It'll light your way to a brand new day.
Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to every version ever of Alice in Wonderland. Today I'm joined once again by my cousin Shaina for an episode I've been saving for literally years to do with her. I discovered the Care Bears in Wonderland back in 2017 during the first year of my YouTube channel, and I saved it as an idea for an episode to do with Shaina. And then one thing led to another. She got engaged, then married, then suddenly years had passed, and we still hadn't done this one. Then when I was doing versions of the Nutcracker last month, I discovered there was a Care Bears Nutcracker, and I decided I had to make this a two-parter. I've always thought it'd be really fun to find a way to bridge the gap between different versions of different stories, so this is the perfect opportunity. Now, the Care Bears, from what little I've seen, don't seem to be very interested in doing faithful adaptations of things. It's more like they take some basic ideas and make up their own story around them. There are plenty of nods to Alice in Wonderland in this movie, but as far as being an actual adaptation of the story, let's just say I don't think serious Carolians are going to find much to love with this one. Okay, so initial thoughts.
It was a much stranger version, and Alice in Wonderland is usually strange in general, so yeah, this was different. Yet another different rendition here.
I thought it was kind of funny. There were a bunch of old reviews that I had saved, and one of them said that this movie was hemlock to Lewis Carroll fans.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And I was watching this, and I was like, yeah, Lewis Carroll fans are gonna hate this movie.
They definitely diverted from the original plotline.
There was, like, none of the original plotline.
They basically did their own thing with just a hint.
Yeah, like, if people would complain about the 2010 Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland being just a made-up story, that was far more faithful than this was.
I would say so. I would definitely agree.
This movie apparently, not that it, like, completely destroyed the Care Bears franchise, but it bombed at the box office to the point where they kind of ended up getting phased out after this movie.
Wow.
Like they came back later, like years later. They kind of rebooted the franchise, but I think this one was kind of, I'm not going to say the nail in the coffin, but it wasn't well liked. One of my favorite negative reviews from the International Film Guide of 1989, it's always been hard to care for these bears.
Oh dear.
And these adventures do not change them for the better. And another one of my favorite negative reviews was Hal Hinson of the Washington Post. Watching this movie is like being pelted mercilessly for 75 minutes with Lucky Charms. And apparently it has never been released on DVD because of how badly it did.
Oh my goodness.
I think it might have gotten a VHS release maybe once.
Okay.
But yeah, it barely made back its budget. It had a $5 million budget and it made $2.6 million.
Wow.
It made it back, like, worldwide, but in America it barely made half its budget. But I thought it was interesting that the music in this, I'm not completely familiar with these people, but the music was done by John Sebastian of the rock band The Lovin' Spoonful.
Okay, I've never heard of them.
I've heard the name, but I don't know anything more about them. And also Natalie Cole, who is the daughter of Nat King Cole.
Oh, wow. Which one did she voice?
I think she just helped with the music.
Oh,
I don't think she voiced a character. And then, again, like, the characters were all voiced by mostly Canadian voice actors who just did a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
Mostly stuff that I wasn't too familiar with, because a lot of it is, like, faded into obscurity. However, I thought you would find this the most interesting. The Princess of Hearts,
Okay.
Alison Court,
Oh my goodness, wait.
Lunette the Clown.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we used to watch The Big Comfy Couch as kids on PBS.
Yes, very faithfully.
She's now like kind of 50-50 voice director, voice actor.
Okay.
She's done a lot of voices her whole life, but The Big Comfy Couch, I think, is one of her biggest, most well-known roles. Also, Jubilee from the 90s X-Men series.
Okay.
And then she's also the main character in a video game franchise about zombies called Resident Evil, but I don't know anything about that game. I just know that it's really popular and she's the main character. But anyways, that was like the main person involved in this that I was like, oh wow, okay, I actually know somebody.
Yeah, I'm always curious to see where she's ended up and what she's up to.
So yeah, the plot of this, it's not the plot of Alice in Wonderland. It's like
Nope.
not even close. The White Rabbit is apparently the uncle of one of the Care Bear creatures. There's a rabbit Care Bear, a Swift Heart Rabbit. Apparently this is her uncle.
Very cute little rabbit.
And I was like, this is like in the 80s and 90s when sitcoms would have a celebrity guest and it would be just the random uncle or aunt of somebody on the show.
Yep, nailed it. Nailed the cliche.
So, this rabbit is looking, for some reason, in the real world for the missing Princess of Hearts. And, like, I don't know, why did he come to the real world to find her? That made no sense.
They were desperate. That's all I can think of.
I did like the detail that they used both entrances to Wonderland, in that he comes through a mirror, and then later on the wizard breaks the mirror so they can't go through it, and they have to find the rabbit hole.
Okay.
I thought that was a clever nod to the original books.
Definitely reminded me of Alice in the Looking Glass.
Yes, the
Yes.
Through the Looking Glass is what the mirror was from, and then of course the rabbit hole is from the original Alice in Wonderland book. But while they're in the real world, they find a girl, Alice, who looks like the princess, and they decide they're going to take her back and she can pretend to be the princess until they find the real one. And I don't think that they would have phrased it this way, but it's like she has depression. She's
Basically.
very low self-esteem.
Very
She doesn't
much so.
think she's special. And I guess the point of this movie is to show kids that everyone is special if you believe in yourself.
Yes, and people need to hear that a lot these days, too.
So that's the lesson that she has to learn, because the beginning, she just thinks that she's boring and there's nothing special about her.
Yeah.
So they eventually all get to Wonderland via two routes, because they start going through the mirror, then the wizard breaks the mirror, they can't get through, then they have to find the rabbit hole, and they eventually all find each other. And I thought it was interesting that when they get to Wonderland, there's this, I don't know what this is, there's a bug singing this trippy song as they're going through the land. And I did think that it was interesting that they did a bunch of pun animals like in the books. They were not from the books. They had like a housefly, which was a house with wings. But they also had, and Sarah would know what this is, I don't remember the name of the creature, but in the poem The Jabberwock, there's a creature with a corkscrew nose.
Oh, sure.
And it was in there. I don't remember what it was called. It was like a background creature.
Okay.
So there was somebody who was familiar with the books working on this.
Yeah.
But as they're going through Wonderland, this wizard's watching them, and he knows that this is not the princess, because he's the one who kidnapped the princess. So he sends his minions, Dim and Dum, who are very loosely based on Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I mean, they have the mentalities of Tweedledee and Tweedledum, but they're like little goblin creatures.
They're
I
a
don't
lot
know why.
smaller. Yeah, they were a lot smaller.
So he sends them out to find and capture this new imposter. And while they're on their way to get them, the Care Bear creatures, like I want to call them the Care Bears, but there's a bunch of things that are not bears. Like there's only 2 or 3 bears. There's like a lion, an elephant, a rabbit. There's non-bear creatures mixed in here as well.
Yeah, in the beginning there was also a monkey and a cat.
That's true.
Yep. You could say Care Bears and Friends.
I'm sure they have a name. Like, I'm not a Care Bear aficionado, so I don't know all the lore, so I'm sure they have a name.
Me neither. I'm still learning.
Anyways, the Care Bear family ends up finding a police officer caterpillar.
Yes.
Which, I don't know if this is on purpose, but I thought it was hilarious that the character that everybody associates with drugs because he smokes a hookah is now a police officer.
Oh, that's irony right there for you. Definitely. I hadn't even made that connection, but that's a good point.
This caterpillar is nothing like the caterpillar in the book. He's like a traffic cop. For some reason, Wonderland is overrun with traffic. I don't know why.
They were all in a hurry to get somewhere.
It's weird. It's random.
Very
random movie. They eventually they come across Dim and Dumb, who are like trying to give them a ride. They refuse, so they leave and come back with giant battle robots. And I was like, what is going on with this movie?
It was like Transformers.
It was strange.
You had two bots turning into a big bot, and you had a little bot turning into a big bot. I mean, they thought of it from different angles, for sure.
So then they have to battle these robots, and they do a Care Bear countdown blast, and then they're defeated.
Which actually the robots just stood there and took. I mean, they didn't even try to run. They're just like, what?
Yeah. And then we get the best part of the movie. For most of this movie, I'm not a huge fan of what all they did with this, but I kind of love the Cheshire Cat.
Yes, same here. My favorite part.
There's been a lot of Cheshire Cats in a lot of versions of Alice. This is weirdly one of my favorites. Like, even this whole movie is, like, it's not the greatest Alice. Like, it's kind of terrible as an adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. But I kind of loved the Cheshire Cat. And I didn't expect to, because I had read beforehand that there was a rapping Cheshire Cat, which sounds on paper like a horrible idea. And I think that there has been another Cheshire Cat in the past. I'm thinking of a really bad CGI animated Alice that I watched. I think it was called What's the Matter with Hatter.
Okay.
That thing was hideous and horrible and annoying. And I kind of expected this to be the same, and it wasn't. I actually liked this rapping Cheshire Cat.
No, he was actually very good, filled with soul, and he had the shades. And in the beginning, when he's just being introduced into the movie, his spots are covering a tree, and they look like subwoofers that are pulsing against a tree. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, for all the weird random choices in the movie, they did right by the Cheshire Cat.
That's for sure.
But he comes in and he basically tells the group they need to split up. They need to get Alice to the palace, and the other group needs to go find the Mad Hatter because he knows where the princess is.
And to make sure to use your heads.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a reference to the hats or what, because
I think it was.
This leads to a bunch of weird scenes with hats, because the Grumpy Bear gets eaten by a snapdragon, which it's like a dragon, but it's also a snapdragon flower. But then when it spits it out, he has a sea captain's hat on his head, and now he thinks he's a sea captain. They keep finding hats, and then they turn into whatever the hat is that they're wearing.
Yes, I think that goes back to whichever hat you're wearing as a description of whatever position that you're filling for that day.
I suppose that makes sense. But it just seemed very random while I was watching it. It's like, okay, now they're wearing an astronaut helmet. Okay.
Definitely, since he put it on and he took on a whole nother personality and he wasn't even himself anymore. It was like the hat just completely took over him.
Yeah. But through all this, the wizard is still watching, and he sends his minions. They capture Alice, and when they get back to the palace, he sings a weird song where he's talking about all the things he wants to do in Wonderland. Basically, he wants to, like, turn all the colors gray and, like, very stereotypical cheesy villain stuff.
Turn everything drab, put it under a bowl, one big dome.
And then in the middle of this, there's this scene that for some reason is like apparently iconic to this movie, at least for people who have watched it, because this is an obscure movie. But online, people always talk about the scary face that the wizard makes. And it's only like 3 frames.
Mm-hmm.
But he like, I don't know, he's like snarls at the camera or something.
It was frightening. And if I remember correctly, his eyes got very large and yellow, and all of his teeth turned into fangs.
Yeah, he like turned into some sort of snaggletooth creature.
Just enough of a shot to give a child a nightmare for life.
Apparently, because a lot of people remember it. But Alice escapes from him, runs into the throne room, and finds the Queen of Hearts, who is not the Queen of Hearts from the book. This one is actually nice. She doesn't want to chop her head off. This is the mother of the missing princess.
Yes, she's much more sweet and personable and wants to take care of Alice.
Yeah, and she knows that this is not her daughter, but she goes along with pretending that it's her daughter and has to do all these things to get her ready to be a princess. She has to learn how to drink tea and play croquet, including the stereotypical you must raise your pinky up. And then the croquet that they have to play is not the croquet from the book. It's not even real croquet. It's like it reminded me kind of Calvin Ball from Calvin and Hobbes, because they're just making things up.
Yeah, that's for sure.
There is a flamingo involved, but it's not a mallet. Even though its face looks like it could be a mallet, she has to ride this thing, and it's like, what is that game where they ride horses and they like bat things off the horses?
Polo?
Yeah. It's like that, except she's on a flamingo. And then the ball, it's not a hedgehog, it's just a ball, and it has to land on top of this heart thing. I don't know. They were making this up as they went. This is not croquet.
And she had a whole stack of teacups and saucers that she had to drink the tea from as she was trying to nail the ball and send it soaring to insurmountable heights to, its target.
Yes, it was a weird game. Meanwhile, the other group ends up finding the Mad Hatter, who looks more like Dopey from Snow White, and he sings a weird song about hats, and he leads them to the Jabberwocky, who is guarding the princess. And this is a very weird, dopey Jabberwocky, but I did appreciate that they gave him buck teeth. And I showed Shaina a picture. Like, I remember the picture from the book. To me, the buck teeth are iconic to the Jabberwocky, and a lot of versions do not do the teeth. They'd give him like fangs. They make him a dragon, basically. But this version actually gave him buck teeth. Even though they weren't like the terrifying buck teeth, I appreciated that at least this Jabberwocky had buck teeth.
Yeah, this Jabberwocky had the kind of buck teeth that made him a little more derpy and lovable. Yes.
Yeah. I think the illustration, looking at it this time, it looked to me kind of like a beaver. It was more like rodent teeth, which I think is like in the lizard bug face of the Jabberwocky makes it even more disturbing. I think that's why the buck teeth are so iconic to me. It's just, I don't know, they just look creepy, and hardly any versions seem to get the Jabberwocky right. Not that this one did, but at least it came closer than some.
Okay.
But yeah, the Grumpy Bear eventually gets launched into this thing's nose, and then he gets launched out of the nose into the princess's cage to rescue her. Like I said, this is a weird story.
He got sneezed out.
He was in the nose for a while, too. I think Shaina said something like, how long are they going to draw this out? But they eventually escape, but then they realize that Jabberwocky has a thorn in his paw. It kind of reminded me of that old fable, I think it's called like Androcles and the Lion. And then they pull the thorn out, and now he's their friend.
Yes.
He prefers to be called Stan, and he helps them get back to the palace.
So he'll stand by you. I just couldn't resist that one. Sorry, guys. I know it's bad.
So then it's time for the coronation, but the wizard has another plan. He makes her do the princess test, which is apparently a test that only a true princess can pass. She has to go to the wasteland and climb Goodbye Mountain and find a spring of water and bring a teacup full of it back to water the sleeping garden and cause it to bloom. This is so random. I think just calling this random is going to be a theme, because there's so much in this that's just like, they're just making this up as they go.
Pretty much.
And he also sends his minions after her to follow her and make sure she never gets back. And they're, like, they never, like, say kill her, but, like, if they succeed with anything they're doing, they're basically trying to murder her. They're, like, trying to dump a giant snowball on her or push her down a well. But there's, like, two of the animal Care Bear creatures follow and, like, save her with their magic rainbow stomachs.
Shooting hearts and rainbows out of their stomachs.
Yeah, and they get launched down a well and find a spider, and they hate spiders apparently, so...
That would be Dim and Dumb, yeah.
Yes. But Alice does eventually make it up the mountain. She gets cheered on by another rap from the Cheshire Cat. And as she's on her way back down with the water, she finds an injured baby unicorn and feeds it the water instead of bringing it back to the garden. And when she gets back with a unicorn instead of water, the wizard now says that she has to make the sleeping garden bloom without the water, because a true princess can make the garden bloom just by touching it. Again, they're making this up as they go.
Because this basically betrays that the only reason he really sent her on that mission was to try to get rid of her.
Yeah.
Because she could have just touched it in the first place.
And then the Cheshire Cat comes back, but now he's a tarantula. But this is all a distraction, because while he's freaking out the little goblin Dim and Dumb creatures, the princesses switch places, and the real princess goes through the garden, makes all the flowers bloom. And then the wizard freaks out, thinking that this can't be the real princess, because he kidnapped the real princess, and he basically just confesses to his crime, and, of course, exposed himself, and then he gets captured, and he's defeated.
Pretty much.
So he's gone. The princess, the real princess, is crowned the new queen, and she helps Alice and the Care Bears get home. And as she's getting Alice ready to leave, she tells her that you are as special as you think you are. Basically, believe in yourself, which is the moral of this movie.
Message which many need to hear today as well.
And then the Care Bears fly home in their magical little cloud cars, and the movie ends with Grumpy Bear rapping while he's eating over the end credits.
Because he's been starving from the beginning and he's ready to eat. And then the Cheshire Cat joins in on this rap with him.
Yes.
And is eating with him as well.
So at least it ended on a high note.
It did. Yes.
For as random and weird as it was. Yeah, as I would say, as a little bit of 80s nostalgia, this is fine. But as an Alice in Wonderland adaptation, it's kind of abysmal.
Very much so. A little weird, a little strange, but pretty good, but overall a bust.
Yeah. And I would say, like, I probably won't ever watch this one again, but I did like the Cheshire Cat, so maybe I'd watch his scenes.
He was a redeeming factor.
It's kind of weird how much I liked the Cheshire Cat. For as weird and unlikable as so many of the other Alice elements were, at least they got that one right.
Yeah.
I mean, not that they got it right according to the book, but as according to putting their own spin on something, they did well for him. At least in my opinion. I would
agree.
I have a feeling other people, Alice purists, probably would disagree, but I liked it.
But he was just so deliciously abstract and hip.
Yes.
I mean, hip to the jive.
But yeah, that's the Care Bears Adventures in Wonderland. That's probably going to be it for this episode, but we'll probably have Shaina back for something else 80s in the future.
Sounds good.
We'll see you then. Thanks for listening to Every Version Ever. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform or to our YouTube channel. Make sure to follow my co-host as well, and if you want more content from us, check out one of the other podcasts in the iHeart Movies Podcast Network, or check out my brand new Patreon. My link tree, as well as any other relevant links, will be in the description. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Into